Warning, what you're about to hear is not comforting. It will change how you see people. It will change how you think about love, death, and who actually cares. If you rely on comforting lies to get through the day, stop watching now. Because once you see this, you can't unsee it, and it may leave you with a sick feeling in your stomach. It creates a sickening, visceral feeling when you realize that the biggest party of your life, filled with the very people who ignored your existence for decades, is the one celebration you won't actually be alive to see. There's a profound and uncomfortable hypocrisy buried in the way we handle the end of a life, and it starts with a simple, brutal observation that nobody likes to talk about because it makes us look into a mirror we'd rather avoid. You can sit in an apartment or a house for 10 years, staring at the phone, waiting for a text, waiting for a visit, waiting for someone to just check in and see if you're still breathing, and you will hear nothing but silence. But the moment that silence becomes permanent, suddenly the calendar clears. It is the strangest phenomenon in the human social contract that we are too busy to grab a coffee with a living friend on a Tuesday afternoon, yet we can instinctively clear an entire day, buy a suit, book a flight, and stand in the rain for 3 hours the moment that friend becomes a memory. We have built an entire cultural infrastructure around honoring people who can no longer feel the honor, while systematically neglecting the people who are desperate to feel it right now. This isn't just about people being busy. It is about the performative nature of grief and the fact that funerals have almost nothing to do with the dead and everything to do with the living trying to convince themselves they are good people. Think about the mechanics of it. You have a person who might have been struggling with loneliness, depression, or just the mundane isolation of modern life. They might have spent their weekends wishing for a knock on the door. And then the biological switch flips, the heart stops, and suddenly they are the most popular person in the room. The church pews or the funeral hall chairs are filled with people who haven't dialed that person's number since the Obama administration. Yet there they are, dabbing their eyes with tissues, nodding solemnly, and whispering about what a tragedy it is. But the tragedy isn't the death. The tragedy is the timing of the affection. It is like starving a person for 40 years and then setting up a 5-star banquet on their grave. The food is there, the effort is there, the money is spent, but the hunger is gone. We have to ask ourselves why this happens, and the answer is uncomfortable because it touches on the selfishness inherent in how we socialize. When a person is alive, visiting them requires something from us. It requires emotional labor. If you visit a living friend, you have to engage, you have to listen to their problems, you have to participate in a dynamic relationship that might be messy or boring or inconvenient. But a dead friend is easy. A dead friend doesn't ask to borrow money. A dead friend doesn't complain about their back pain. A dead friend allows you to project whatever narrative you want onto them without them ever correcting you. This is why the room fills up. It fills up because mourning is a one-way street where the mourner gets to be the main character. You see this when people go up to the podium to give a eulogy. Listen closely next time you are unfortunately at one of these events. Listen to the pronouns. It is rarely about he or she or they in isolation. It is almost always about I remember when. I felt so, I am going to miss. It becomes a performance of the survivor's capacity for sadness rather than a genuine reflection of the deceased's reality. And then, of course, there is the buffet. The literal consumption of food is the most bizarre, primal, and revealing part of the funeral ritual. We bury a body, and then we immediately go eat potato salad. It's this surreal transition from the depths of mortality to the mundane satisfaction of appetite. You have these people standing around in a reception hall, holding paper plates with cold cuts and cheese cubes, chatting about the weather or their jobs or how bad the traffic was getting to the cemetery. The person who is the reason for the gathering is in a box or an urn a few hundred yards away, completely removed from the sensory experience, while the people who ignored them are nourishing themselves. It creates this stark, almost cruel contrast where the living reaffirm their aliveness through eating, almost rubbing it in the face of the silence they left behind. It's the buffet of sorrow, where the price of admission is a few tears during the service, and the reward is a free lunch and a chance to catch up with cousins you haven't seen in 5 years. There's a concept I want to introduce here, something I call the guilt tax. A lot of the flowers you see at a funeral are not gifts of love, they are receipts for paid guilt. When someone dies, the people who were absent feel a sudden, sharp pang of realization that the opportunity for connection is closed forever. That door is locked. So, to alleviate that internal pressure, to quiet that voice that says you were a bad friend or you were a negligent son, they overcompensate. They buy the biggest wreath, they write the longest Facebook post, they cry the loudest. It's a transaction. They are buying peace of mind. They are trying to retroactively fix 20 years of silence with 20 minutes of intense mourning. But the math doesn't work. You cannot balance the equation of a lifetime of neglect with a single day of high-end sorrow. It's like neglecting to pay your mortgage for 30 years and then showing up with a bouquet of roses for the bank manager after the house has already been foreclosed on. The asset is gone, the relationship is liquidated, the gesture is hollow. And this leads us to the most cynical yet liberating realization you can have about your own life. People move on with terrifying speed. We like to imagine that our absence will leave a crater in the world, that the people around us will be halted in their tracks, unable to function because we are no longer there. And for a tiny, tiny circle of people, maybe your spouse, maybe your parents, that might be true for a while. But for the crowd, for the people eating the sandwiches, you are a Tuesday afternoon inconvenience. You are a disrupted work schedule. By Wednesday, they are back to complaining about their coffee being cold. By Thursday, they are posting memes. By next week, your name is something that comes up only when Facebook reminds them of a memory 3 years from now. This sounds depressing, but it is actually the most freeing thing you can understand because it destroys the need for social approval. If these people are going to get over your death in 48 hours, why are you spending your life agonizing over their opinions? Why are you living to impress people who will use your funeral as a networking event? Let's dig deeper into the fake aspect of it, specifically the revisionist history that happens the moment a heart stops beating. Have you ever noticed that nobody is ever an asshole at their funeral? You could have a guy who was mean, stingy, grumpy, and generally unpleasant to be around, a guy who nobody visited because he made them feel terrible. But the moment he dies, suddenly he was complicated, or he had a unique way of showing love, or he was a firecracker. We whitewash the reality of the person to fit the solemnity of the occasion. We strip them of their humanity, which includes their flaws, and turn them into a two-dimensional saint. This is the ultimate form of disrespect, really. It's saying that the actual person wasn't good enough to be remembered, so we have to invent a better version of them to mourn. It's fake, it's a masquerade, and the people sitting in the audience know it. They look at each other with knowing glances while the eulogy is happening, thinking, that is not the guy I knew, but nobody says anything because the social script demands compliance. We are all actors on a stage playing the role of the bereaved because breaking character is seen as rude, but isn't it ruder to lie about the dead? This brings us to the economics of the goodbye. The funeral industry is a multi-billion-dollar machine built entirely on the insecurity and guilt of the living. It predicates its business model on the idea that how much you spend on the box is directly correlated to how much you love the person inside it. They upsell you on the lining of the casket. They upsell you on the concrete vault. They upsell you on the protective seal. For what? For a body that is returning to the earth. It is predatory, but it works because nobody wants to be the cheapskate at the funeral home. Nobody wants to say, no, I don't think he needs the velvet pillow. So we spend $10,000, $15,000 on a ceremony for someone who, when they were alive, might have been struggling to pay for their prescriptions. Think about that allocation of resources. Imagine if, instead of spending 10 grand on a funeral, those friends and family had pooled that money 5 years earlier to send the person on a vacation, or to fix their car, or to just throw a massive party while they were breathing. That money could have created joy. Instead, it is used to decorate sadness. It is a misallocation of love capital. We invest in the ending rather than the story. There is a psychological phenomenon at play here called mortality salience. When we attend a funeral, we aren't just crying for the deceased. We are crying for ourselves. We are crying because we see the box and we realize, fully and terrified, that we are going to be in the box. The funeral is a memento mori, a reminder of death. The tears are often tears of self-pity and existential dread. We look at the body and we see our own timeline shortening. That's why people show up. They show up to stare into the abyss for an hour so they can feel brave for looking, and then they retreat to the safety of the reception hall to eat life-affirming carbohydrates and reassure themselves that they are still here. The person in the coffin is just the prop for this existential theater. It sounds harsh, but if you strip away the sentimentality, that is the mechanism at work. If it were purely about the person, we would celebrate them while they were here. The fact that we wait until the threat of death is realized proves that it's about our reaction to death, not our appreciation of life. Now, consider the flowers for the dead metaphor. It is the perfect symbol of this entire dysfunction. Flowers are cut from their roots. They are dying the moment they are arranged. We bring dying things to a dead person. It's a gesture that looks beautiful for about 24 hours and then it rots. It creates a mess that someone else has to clean up. Contrast that with the effort it takes to keep a relationship alive. A relationship is like a potted plant. It needs water, it needs sunlight, it needs attention, or it withers. Most people are terrible gardeners of friendship. They let the plant die. They let the text thread go cold for 6 months. They decline the invitations. They drift away. But when the person dies, they rush to the florist. They want to bring the bouquet now, but you can't water a dead plant. The time to bring the flowers was on a random Wednesday in March when the person was feeling down. The time to show up was when they were in the hospital for the routine surgery, not the morgue. The disconnect between "I would die for you" and "I can't make it to dinner, I'm tired" is the defining struggle of modern friendship. There is also a strange relief that people feel at funerals, which they will never admit. There is a sense of closure, yes, but also a release from obligation. As long as a person is alive, there is a potential duty. You should call them. You should visit. That should hangs over your head like a cloud. When they die, the should disappears. You can't visit them anymore. You are off the hook. The funeral is the formal stamping of the ticket of release. People show up to get their ticket stamped. They show up to publicly demonstrate that they fulfilled their contract so they can walk away without the ghost of obligation haunting them. It's why you see people looking almost lighter leaving a funeral than they did arriving. They have performed the ritual, they have paid the tax. Now they are free to go back to their lives without the nagging guilt of not checking in. It is a dark way to look at human connection, but if you observe the body language in the parking lot of a cemetery, you see it. You see the loosening of ties, the checking of phones, the immediate pivot back to the trivial. So where does this leave us? If we accept that this is the reality, that the funeral is a fake performance for the living, that the food is a distraction, and that the tears are often self-serving, what do we do with that information? Do we become bitter? Do we refuse to have a funeral? No, we use it as a weapon against our own complacency. We use it to change how we live right now today. This is the chaos twist of the entire situation. The fakeness of funerals is actually the greatest instruction manual for life you will ever get. Once you realize that nobody is really going to care that much when you're gone, you stop living for a legacy that doesn't exist and start living for the moment you are actually in. You start realizing that the only people who matter are the ones who will eat pizza with you on the floor of your living room when you are broke. The people who show up when there is no ceremony, no suits, no public praise. Those are the real ones, the crowd at the funeral, that's just the audience. You don't live for the audience, you live for the cast. You start to audit your relationships. You look at your phone and ask, if I needed help moving a couch on Saturday morning, who would actually pick up? That number is very small. And that is okay. It is better to have 3 people who visit you while you are alive than 300 who visit you when you are dead. This understanding also changes how you treat others. It forces you to be the person who breaks the cycle. You become the person who sends the text for no reason. You become the person who says, I was thinking about you and just wanted to say I love you, without waiting for a tragedy to prompt it. You stop saving the good china for a special occasion. You stop saving the nice words for the eulogy. You give the eulogy now. If you think someone is brilliant, tell them. If you think someone is a light in your life, say it to their face while their eyes can still light up hearing it. Why are we hoarding compliments for a time when the recipient can't hear them? It's absurd. We need to bankrupt our accounts of affection every single day. We need to spend it all. There is a powerful concept called the living funeral. It sounds morbid, but it's actually beautiful. Some people, usually those with terminal diagnoses who know the clock is running out, choose to have the party while they are still there. They gather the people, they have the food, they play the music, and they listen to the speeches. And do you know what happens? It is awkward at first, it is raw, but it is real. The tears are met with hugs, not a cold casket. The laughter is shared. The love is actually received. It exposes the traditional funeral for what it is. A misconnection. We shouldn't need a terminal diagnosis to have a living funeral. Every birthday, every holiday, every random get-together is a chance to do this. But we have to fight against the inertia of someday. We are hardwired to think we have infinite time. We think, I'll visit grandma next month, or I'll reconnect with my old college roommate when things settle down. But things never settle down. The only thing that settles is the dust. The fake funeral relies on this procrastination. It relies on the fact that we all think we have time to make things right, so we don't do it today. And then when time runs out, we try to cram all that missing effort into a 3-hour service. It's the procrastination of love, and like all procrastination, the quality of the work suffers at the end. The love expressed at a funeral is panicked love. It is desperate love. It isn't the calm, steady, nourishing love of presence. There's also something to be said about the moving on aspect. You mentioned how they eat, talk about missing you, and then move on. This moving on is the biological imperative. If we didn't move on, the species would collapse under the weight of grief. But knowing this should liberate you from taking yourself too seriously. You are temporary. Your problems are temporary. Your embarrassments are temporary. The people you are trying to impress are going to be worried about a stain on their shirt 5 minutes after you are lowered into the ground. So take the risk, write the book, ask the girl out, quit the job you hate. Because the jury you are afraid of, that jury of peers who you think is judging your every move, is going to dissolve the moment you leave the room. We need to stop viewing the funeral as the summary of a life. The summary of a life is the Tuesday afternoons, it's the breakfast conversations, it's the long drives. The funeral is just the punctuation mark at the end of the sentence. It isn't the sentence itself, but we act like the punctuation mark is the whole point. We obsess over the fun of the period while ignoring the words that came before it. If you want to defeat the fakeness of the funeral, you have to invest in the authenticity of the sentence. So here is the challenge, and it is a difficult one because it requires swallowing your pride and breaking the social script. Identify the people who you would actually want to eat with, not the people you feel obligated to invite, but the people whose company feeds you, and go feed them. Literally, buy them dinner, sit with them, look them in the eye. Create the memory now, because the alternative is the scene we painted at the beginning. A room full of people in black, eating egg salad sandwiches, checking their watches, and pretending that they didn't waste the years when you were actually there. The fake funeral is the default setting of society. It is the automatic path. To avoid it, you have to go manual. You have to steer the car yourself. You have to drive toward people while the engine is still running. Ultimately, the reason funerals feel fake is because they are trying to solve a spiritual problem with a material solution. They are trying to fix a lack of connection with satin and oak and lilies. But connection cannot be bought and it cannot be retroactively applied. It is a perishable good. It has to be consumed fresh. The realization that they never visit you when you are alive isn't an indictment of them. It's a wake-up call for you. It tells you exactly what the market value of your silence is. If you are silent, if you're waiting, nobody is coming. You have to be the one to break the silence. You have to be the one to make the visit. And if you do that and they still don't reciprocate, then you know who to cut from the list. You know who doesn't get a seat at the table. And knowing that is better than wondering. The next time you drive past a cemetery, look at the rows of stones. Realize that for every stone there was a funeral. There was a buffet, there were tears, and now there is mostly quiet. The lawnmower runs, the sun sets. The world keeps spinning. The only thing that remains of those lives is the impact they had on the people they touched while they were warm. The stone doesn't matter. The flowers don't matter. The only thing that matters is the love that was given before the clock ran out. Don't wait for the fake party. Throw the real one today, because the saddest thing isn't dying. The saddest thing is being mourned by people who never knew you, while the people who could have known you were waiting for an invitation you never sent. There is one final thought that usually keeps people up at night once they understand this dynamic. It's the question of who specifically is sitting at your table right now. If you look around your life and you see only the people who would show up for the free food, but not the people who would help you change a flat tire in the rain, you are already living in a funeral. You're walking through the wake of your own life, and you have the power to walk out the door, leave that room, and find the people who don't need a tragedy to tell you that you matter. That is the only way to beat the system. That is the only way to make sure that when the end comes, the tears are real, the loss is felt, and the love wasn't something that had to be manufactured in a florist shop an hour before the service began.